This last paragraph, I think, sums up very well the reality and practice of the spiritual practitioner. Live in the present, with your consciousness externalized momentarily, but without any effort. And this is what we need to do. There's this assumption that once you're liberated, once you've attained self-realization, that's it. End of story. You're living your life in some kind of altered state, some kind of higher state of consciousness, full of bliss or something. You have to get on with things. You still get on with things. And when you get on with things, you have to direct your attention to things. This is when your consciousness is externalized momentarily, because you can always keep bringing it back to itself, but you need to externalize it in order to engage, in order to interact. It's just that you're not making any investments, any emotional investments in that externalization. And that's what it means without any effort. You're just doing what needs to be done. When the mind stops linking itself to the past and to the future, it becomes no mind. If from moment to moment your mind dwells on what is and drops it effortlessly at once, the mind becomes no mind, full of purity. If you're doing your actions with some kind of emotional investment, then you're caught up in the future possibilities. Or if you're doing it somehow driven by past influences, then again you're caught up with external influences. So you give up the past and the future. It is only as long as the mind continues to be agitated that it experiences the diversity of its own projection or expansion, even as rain falls only as long as there are clouds. And it is only as long as the infinite consciousness limits itself into the finite mind that such agitation and expansion take place. If consciousness ceases to be the finite mind, then know that the very roots of cyclic world illusion, of birth and death, are burnt, and there is perfection. So how does consciousness cease to be the finite mind? This finite mind with its limited notions that we identify with, all the stories it creates and that we get involved in and take to be real. Consciousness gets over that by being aware of itself, by being conscious of itself. That's all. Vasishta continued. Consciousness free from the limitations of the mind is known as the inner intelligence. It is the essential nature of no mind, and therefore it is not tainted by the impurities of concepts and percepts. These are the two key things here. Concepts are notions, and percepts are notions of sensory experience. So we don't get caught up in our notions, particularly notions of perception. Perception is also a story. That is the reality, that is supreme consciousness, that is the state known as the Supreme Self, that is omniscience. Because in that state you're knowing all that can be known, direct knowing. Everything else is a notion, a possibility, a memory, a hypothesis, an inference, a deduction, a story. Notions. And that vision is not had when the wicked mind functions. The wicked mind is the mind that draws us away from our intrinsic nature as pure consciousness. Where there is mind, that's the cognitive process, there flourish hopes and desires, and there arise the experiences of pain and pleasure. The consciousness which has been awakened to the truth does not fall into concepts and percepts. Therefore, even though it seems to undergo various psychological experiences, it does not give rise to the world illusion and the cycle of world appearance. In the case of those who have been awakened through the study of scriptures, company of holy men, and unceasing and vigilant practice of truth, their consciousness has reached the pure state of non-objectiveness. So, once you've touched this consciousness which underlies your being, you need to practice by whatever means you can. You need to practice the unceasing and vigilant practice of truth, and this is realization of your own consciousness, contemplation of its nature. And then you reach the pure state of non-objectiveness. You stop thinking in terms of objects, you stop thinking in terms of the reality of objects. Hence, one should forcefully uplift one's mind from the state of ignorance and vacillation and apply it to the study of scriptures and to the company of holy sages. I've said before, I think people stumble on the supreme truth probably many times a day. They don't realise what it is, and if they do, they perhaps don't want to have anything to do with it. But if you do want to pursue it, then you have to pursue it in all activities, in all behaviour that you're undertaking. There isn't any time that it's inappropriate to pursue it. And you use whatever method you can. I'm using the Yoga Vasishta. You might have other teachers, you might have other practices, but basically what's necessary is that the attention needs to be brought back to itself as often as possible and for as long as possible. And you take a good look at what is going on from that perspective.